A wealthy man named Chris lives alone in a mansion. He created an app that allows him to control his entire house through his phone. After making a lot of money by selling his company to Google, he decided to retire while still young. Since Chris's relationship with his wife, Jamie, wasn't going well, she decided to file for divorce. But Chris still hasn't signed the papers. They have a daughter named Willow who tells her mother that she misses her father. One night, Chris goes to the supermarket, where he meets a young woman named Sky. Chris approaches Sky and gives her some advice about wines. Moments later, Sky is still outside, and when Chris shows up, she says that her rideshare driver canceled. Chris then offers her a ride. After getting out of Chris's car, Sky stops in front of her apartment and hears her roommate Lisa screaming. Chris invites Sky to go to his house, and after saying no, she changes her mind and goes with him. The owner, Ronald, watches her leave. When they get to Chris's house, he gives Sky some ice cream and then shows her his wine collection, which surprises her. Chris tells Sky about the app he created and reveals that he likes to be alone. Sky says she was a model in Los Angeles but got tired of it and decided to move to find something better. However, so far, she has only been able to get a job as a waitress. Realizing that it's getting late, Sky thinks she should go home, but Chris wants her to stay, and then they kiss and get intimate all night long. The next morning, Chris wakes up and notices that Sky is no longer there. Sky returns to the apartment, and Lisa yells at her because she didn't call and left her alone all night. Then we find out that the two of them are in a relationship. Chris feels lonely and thinks about Sky for a long time. When he looks at a drawing, he remembers Willow, that one day he promised not to leave her alone. Later, Chris goes to the bar where Sky works and she is happy to see him. In the middle of the conversation, Sky reveals that she lied about what she said, and that she actually moved away because she wanted to get away from an overbearing family, and she never had a good family. Sky also tells him about the foster home she went through. Chris tells him that even though he was raised by parents, they didn't care about Chris, because they were focused on their business. When they leave the bar, the two run into a guy called Kiju who was trying to steal the car. Chris then scolds the guy, and when Kiju gets aggressive, Sky throws a glass bottle, making the guy furious, who goes after Chris and ends up breaking his leg. Chris arrives home in a wheelchair being helped by Sky. As Sky feels guilty, she wants to do everything to be able to help him. Chris then decides to hire her as his nurse and asks her to go to her apartment and bring her things to his house. He also provides the house system codes for her to get in. Upon arriving at the apartment, she hears Ronald telling Lisa that her life was better before meeting Sky. Seeing Sky packing her bags, Lisa begs her not to leave, but Sky says she won't, and then they kiss. After returning to Chris's house, Sky takes care of him and they have fun. Chris is outside and doesn't realize that Jamie is calling. The next morning, while Chris is sleeping, Sky takes his phone and unlocks it using his face. Ronald goes to Lisa's apartment to collect the rent, but when she doesn't respond, he uses another key to open the door. Upon entering, he is shocked to find Lisa lifeless in the bathtub. After the police arrive, they explain that Lisa must have done this on her own, but Ronald claims this happened because Sky abandoned Lisa. However, the police are suspicious because they couldn't find any record of a woman named Skylar at Chris's house. He receives a call from Jamie. She is surprised by the way he treats her. Chris then explains that he broke his leg in an accident and asks Jamie to bring Willow over for the weekend. Chris takes advantage of Sky being in the shower to snoop around Sky's things and finds some photos of Sky and Lisa together. Upon seeing this, Sky doesn't mind and says that it's necessary in a relationship and that she would do the same thing. As night falls, the two become intimate, and then Sky goes to Willow's room and spends the night there. The next day, Chris wakes up and doesn't find Sky at home, and he also can't find his phone. Later, when Chris sees the news, he discovers that Lisa has died. When Sky returns, he tells her about Lisa's death, but she doesn't care and reveals that it was she who took Lisa's life. Chris thinks it's a prank from Lisa, but she reveals the whole truth and tells him that she was using Lisa just to live in the apartment. There, she was able to observe Chris and learn all about the man's routine, and their meeting at the market was all planned. Upon hearing all this, Chris orders Sky to leave his house, but she doesn't move. So when Chris tries to leave the house, Sky locks the doors using Chris's phone, and when Chris lunges at her to get his phone back, Sky hits him with a taser. In Lisa's house, Ronald goes there to clean, and then he finds Lisa's telescope aimed at Chris's house. When he looks through it, he discovers that Lisa is at Chris's house hiding from the authorities. Moments later, Chris wakes up tied to a wheelchair, and Sky decides to ask for all the passwords and security codes. But since Chris says he won't give her any access, she grabs a drill and attacks his still broken leg. When she manages to, she transfers all of Chris's money to her account. Then she asks Chris to call his bankers to sell the stocks, and with that, she will open her own company. Sky decides to free Chris's hands so he can make the video call. Suddenly, Chris pushes Sky to the ground and tries to attack her, but she acts quickly and stabs his shoulder with the scissors. She then threatens to hurt Jamie and Willow, which makes him agree to give up his money. Sky starts taking pictures of artworks that are worth a good amount of money to sell. Moments later, Kiju appears, and it is revealed that he has been working with Sky all this time. She then leaves with him to handle some business. Minutes later, Ronald takes the opportunity to break into Chris's house by breaking the window, and Sky finds out because she received a signal on Chris's phone. Ronald says he will only help release Chris after he agrees to let him take the Picasso painting, which is valued at $7 million. Chris asks him to call the police, but Ronald says he doesn't have a cell phone because he believes it causes brain cancer due to 5G radiation. After he releases Chris, Sky arrives and uses her phone to lock all the doors, preventing Ronald from escaping. Ronald then grabs a knife to defend himself, but Sky has a sword. Realizing he is at a disadvantage, Ronald runs to hide in a room. Sky chases Ronald, then she charges at him and finishes him off with a sword. Chris manages to break free and runs outside, but unfortunately the car is locked. However, he grabs a bicycle that rides on the snow to escape, but Chris falls on the road. A car then stops, and a man named Sebastian decides to help Chris and calls for emergency services. He then starts telling everything that happened, and suddenly he finds himself back at home. Realizing that it was actually Sky who was talking to him, Sebastian knocks Chris out and puts him back in the wheelchair. He explains that he is Sky's stepfather and that he married her mother, but after Sky's mother died, he decided to pursue a relationship with Sky and teach her how to use tricks on rich men. Sebastian thinks this is fair because the rich have everything and never want to share with the poorer people. As night falls, Chris stands in front of a room and hears Sebastian and Sky getting intimate. Next, Sky tells Chris that she's going to miss that house when she leaves, and Chris responds that she could stay in the house if she chose to have a serious relationship with him instead of wanting to pull a scam. Sky then informs him that they're going to Chris's vault, which has $14 million in bonds, but for that, they need Chris's fingerprint. So, Sebastian takes Chris's thumb. On the next morning, Jamie takes Willow to Chris's house, and upon arriving she becomes suspicious. When she calls for Willow, Sky appears holding the child and says that she is Chris's nurse. She informs Jamie that Chris is sleeping and that the two should come back later. Jamie grows increasingly suspicious and threatens to call the police. At that moment, Sebastian appears and helps Sky take Jamie and Willow to the room where Chris is, locking them in there, and to avoid being tracked, she destroys Jamie's phone by putting it in the microwave. Sebastian creates a fake splint to use Chris's thumb so they can gain access to the bank. When they arrive at the bank, Sebastian pretends to be Chris and uses the thumb to gain access. After a few attempts, he succeeds, but to their surprise, when they open the box, they find a note inside. At Chris's house, while they play heads or tails, Chris notices a ventilation duct and has the idea for Willow to escape through it. However, Jamie doesn't want her daughter to do that because it's too dangerous. But soon, she changes her mind after realizing that this is their only chance to survive. Chris informs Willow that the lock code is her birthday, and then he puts her in the ventilation duct that leads outside the house. Chris then tells Jamie how all of this happened, and Jamie reveals to Chris that they will not find the titles because she took them and hid them, receiving advice from the lawyer. Chris then realizes that Sky and Sebastian will soon return to ask about the titles, and they try to tell Willow to come back, but the girl has already managed to leave the house and re-enter through the front door. Meanwhile, Sky and Sebastian watch through the security cameras and realize they need to enter the house. As soon as they enter, Sebastian hands his gun to Sky, and when he is passing through the hallway, Chris charges at him and Jamie and Willow take the opportunity to hide. Sebastian manages to gain full control over Chris, and then Sky appears, pointing her gun at Chris and asking where Jamie is. Sebastian tells Sky to shoot, but suddenly she has a breakdown and shoots him. Chris seizes the moment to attack Sky and manages to get his phone back. He uses the home control app to blast music and turn off the lights, leaving Sky disoriented. However, Chris can see her location due to the thermal cameras. While Sky continues searching for Chris, he further confuses her by activating all the home controls, opening the windows and lighting the fireplace. As Sky passes by the door where he's hiding, he lunges at her, causing her to drop her weapon. But Sky is able to fight against him because he is still injured. Jamie then acts and goes after Sky, but she injures Jamie's leg with the knife, and Chris attacks her with the sword. Just when Sky is about to eliminate both of them, she suddenly falls, revealing that it was Willow who shot her. They hear the police arriving, and Jamie takes Willow outside while Chris crawls on the ground trying to go with them. Before taking her last breath, Sky reveals that her real name is Margaret. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.